Donald Trump took a time machine and he set himself in the future 50 years because he wanted to see what the history books had to say about his presidency. So he got there 50 years forward, and he opened up the internet and he looked it wasn't Google anymore. Google had gone. They didn't have a Google anymore. Somehow it went bankrupt. And then he went looking to see what else had gone bankrupt. And lo and behold, there was no Facebook. He looked to see if there was an Instagram. No Instagram. And then he went and he looked to see if there was still a YouTube. Yes, YouTube survived 50 years in the future. And it was a very minor thing. It was mostly historical and no one ever used it. He figured that it was a good thing he went only 50 years because he figured if it was 75, YouTube would have failed by then too. So anyway, he used some kind of a search engine and he looked himself up, Donald J. Trump president, and lo and behold, they made a footnote and they said, well, Donald J. Trump was actually one of the last presidents of the United States because between now and then, the United States of America disappeared. It was abolished, and they didn't mention anything about how it was replaced. But as far as Donald Trump's presidency, they said, well, when he was born and when he died, and a few comments about his children. Mostly they said he was a do-nothing president. Nothing happened on his watch. And in the end, he was basically considered an entertainment celebrity till the end. And he looked down and he saw that after he left the presidency, he went back to doing various things that he was doing before. Real estate deals and appearances on television. Donald was not terribly happy with what the time machine told him about his life as the presidency. So he got back in the time machine and he tuned back to present day. And then he kicked all of the people. He said, "You're all fired. You're all fired." Who? Everyone here in the White House, you're all fired. Everyone. He fired his wife. He fired his children. He fired his dog. He fired everyone except the janitor. He kept the janitor on because the janitor didn't talk and didn't bother him. And then he had a big stew. He sat next to the presidential fireplace and he got a good roaring fire going, and he just stewed himself because he was just fit to be tied. He said, "I didn't make any impact on this country at all. I was the president." He just stewed. He was just vexed. He didn't know what to do. All he ever knew was what he just did. All he ever knew was just to fire people. So once he got a good firing, then he had to reevaluate himself. Well, what happened in the future that the United States disappeared? I was supposed to make it great again, and then it disappeared within 25 years after I left. Something went really wrong. So Donald stewed and stewed and stewed and stewed. And then he went and he got his old high school yearbook out. And he started just looking through the pages. He started looking at the people that were in high school with him. And then he thought, I got to hire myself a new secretary because I want her to start calling these people. So lo and behold, 2 weeks later, after his new secretary had tried to get a hold of as many people as she could out of the old yearbook, Donald held a great big ball at the White House for all the people in his high school. And once he had them all there at the White House, he cornered them one by one, and he asked them pointed questions. And he doesn't tell us anything about what the questions were, only that he tried to get everyone into his, his files, what they had to say. And then once he had done all this work, he went back and he fired everyone again. And then he made himself a nice big pot of coffee, and he sat in the Oval Office, and then he started reviewing his notes. What had everyone said? And Then he started a big fire in the fireplace, and he threw all the files in there, everything anybody had ever said. He threw it all in the fire, had a huge fire, and he went back to the big chair behind the desk in the Oval Office, and he picked up the phone, and he called me, and he said, "Uncle, I don't know. I've tried it my way, and every idea I come up with, I can't get anywhere because no one is smart. So I heard about you, Uncle, and I want you to come in and replace me as President of the United States." Well, I said, constitutionally, you can't appoint a successor like that. Then he hemmed and hawed, and he said, "Well, come in here and be my counselor." I said, "I can be your counselor, yes." So I said, "I don't want to go to Washington. I'd rather go to your Florida estate because I don't like the cold in the winter." And at that point, Donald hung up, and I'm still waiting to hear if he's going to send a Learjet for me. I'm DJ Uncle, and that's my story about Donald Trump. Don't believe it. Don't believe anything I say. I'm a liar, and I'm fired.